Hi, Curious Reader podcast listeners. This is Melissa Mannon of Goffstown High School. I am the librarian here, and I do a podcast with Stacy DeRozier of the Goffstown Public Library that focuses on young adult books. We've been doing this since September 2020. It is now February 2021, and we thought it was time to start up a YouTube channel so perhaps you could get to know us a little bit better and see our methods. So the episode that I'm introducing to you today, from which I've taken clips, is A Song of Wraith and Ruin, which I think was our third podcast. We're now entering our fifth one. Go to the Curious Reader podcast on Podbean, which is available through all of the stations or all the channels where you normally get your podcasts.
Hey friends, I'm Stacy.
And I'm Melissa.
And we're teaming up each month to chat about books.
What makes our podcast a little different is that we want to encourage your curiosity beyond the book.
So how will we do that? In addition to discussing the themes, characters, and our review of the book,
we will also discuss what the book taught us and how it inspired a curiosity of information well after the story is finished.
Now, let's get on with our episode. We are happy you joined us today for the Curious Reader podcast. This is our third full-length episode.
We are remote today, separated by a snowstorm. We're usually at the Goffstown Public Library recording together. So this is our first Zoom podcast, Stacy. Welcome to 2020.
So today we are discussing A Song of Wraiths and Ruin, the young adult book by Roseanne A. Brown. This fantasy fiction book, steeped in West African folklore and culture, packed a punch in fascinating information and in page number. At just a bit over 460 pages, I was scared at tackling a book of this length, especially when fantasy is not a go-to genre for me. But I'm elated to say that this book did not disappoint. It is a complex, plot-driven, full of riddles, mystery, twists, and a touch of romance.
So one thing that you were talking about is basically the growth of these characters. And it
Yes.
strikes me now as I'm thinking about it that the author did such a good job of depicting teen characters who have room for growth. They're not perfect people, and they are unsure of themselves. And I think she did that really well.
I have to say, this part of the book is where I was hooked, and it happens early on. There was something about this scene that totally took over my senses. Here is Karina, disguising herself as just a common girl seated among the other revelers, mainly travelers and merchants, and she's listening to the bard play. She assesses him as talented, but kind of sleazy. Yeah. And one thing leads to another, and now they are in a musician's duel, allowing the response of the audience to decide the winner. The bard picks the song, a mournful tune that everyone knew. It was a story of how the first sultana battled her own husband, ushering in Karina's family's rule over Zoran. The bard gives a soulful rendition. The audience has tears from the story, but Karina, she takes that old battered
oud.
I knew it earlier. Now, like, what is that word?
Well, it's spelled O-U-D, so it's confusing.
But Karina, she takes that old battered oud and she brings the house down. She jumps on a table. She ups the tempo. Each time she gets to another verse, she sings in the native language of each of the territories. She's really including diversity of the audience to experience the beauty and the sorrow of the song. Then I sought out a YouTube video to find out exactly what the oud was. I listened to the musician play it. It was magnificent. And honestly, when I heard it, the tone, the sound, it fully captured that scene. Roseanne A. Brown's lyrical writing and the sound of the oud brought that scene full circle in my mind. And I heard that there may be a movie in the making, and that scene will be a highlight for me.
So for me, my father played the accordion. So to me, I just like Katrina's father played the oud and was passed on to her, the accordion was passed on to my sister, who's a musician. So I hope our audience thinks about some of the items in their lives that get passed down and the meaning behind them, especially if they have an instrument in this case. So for Karina, her oud was not just something she played, but it carried a piece of her heart. So my third part finally Symbolism is prominent throughout the book, and I actually studied symbolism for 2 years in college. I received a stipend to study gravestone iconography, so this was something that was really important to me. I ac-
2 years?
yeah, I was actually paid
Wow.
a stipend, and then they sent me to Caltech University to present a paper on it. So I wanted a good definition of symbolism. I know what it means, but I wanted something succinct. So I consulted our schools. Here we go again. Gale and Context Online Collection. Are you listening, my students? For a definition to help me explain this concept to those who may not be familiar with it. So symbolism is the use of one thing to represent an image or concept. A symbol is a person, animal, place, object, or event that has meaning in itself, but that also represents another concept. And this book is dripping with symbolism. First, we find in here symbols as parables, which are a kind of morality tale. This kind of symbol is specifically related to literature, and the stories of the hyena within this book are an example of this. So, the big story of the hyena is in chapter 20. The champions are challenged to tell a story that will captivate the hearts of their audience. And then Malik steps up and says, quote, "I'm going to tell you a hyena tale." And then the author tells us, quote, "Hyena tales were so common that unless one was as gifted as the most talented griot, it was a waste of time using them to impress anyone." And that got me intrigued about them. Why are these stories so common in this culture? What is their purpose? In